Welcome to today's session. This is session number 2, and this is related to players in the apparel export industry. What we are going to talk about, primarily the content. We're going to talk about a manufacturer exporter, merchant exporter, buying house, buying agent, buying office, liaison office, job workers, vendors versus suppliers, forwarding and logistic agents. There might be some of these terms you would have come across earlier. If not, need not worry, we are going to discuss these in detail. I'm sure during the first semester you have been able to gather the value chain and the supply chain which is involved in apparel manufacturing, where, for example, cotton is grown in the fields and then it is sent to the ginning industry where spinning is done. After spinning, we get the yarn. Yarn is sent to the weaving industry. The weaving mills, they make the fabric, and then the fabric is sent to the processors for dyeing or printing, whatever the case may be. And then the processed fabric is taken up by the apparel manufacturers who convert the fabric using other accessories, zippers and buttons and labels and stitching thread and things like that, and then convert this raw material into finished garments. And then these garments are sent to the warehouses, to the wholesaler or the distributor or to the dealers using the transportation services, and then the goods are sent finally to the retail houses in case we are talking about offline retailing, and in case we are talking about online retailing, then in that case the finished goods are sent from the distribution center to the customer directly as and when the orders are raised. That is by far the value chain and the supply chain that we see when we talk about apparel industry. So we're going to talk about the manufacturer exporter and merchant exporter and the other various people involved in apparel export industry. So this is the value chain, one of the best pictures that I've ever come across, where in one picture you are able to see the ginning unit, from the ginning to the spinning to weaving to processing to stitching to the retailer, and there we have the customer at the end making the purchase. Now if you talk about export and import, there has to be an exporter and there has to be an importer, and whenever we say export import, we are talking about two different countries. So on the screen you see right now, on one side we have India and on the other side we have France, and the entity which sells, which makes the product and sells, is maybe called an exporter or a seller or a factory or a vendor or a manufacturer. These are the terms loosely used for an exporter. And the person who is placing the order, the person who is based in, or the brand or the company which is based out of another country, that person or the company is called an importer or a buyer or a customer or a client. So these terms are again loosely used interchangeably. And what essentially happens is that the orders are given by the importer to the exporter, and the exporter executes the order and sends the shipment to the importer's country or whichever country the importer wants the goods to be sent to. So the flow of goods is happening from the exporting country to the importing country, and once the goods have been sent and everything is found correct, then the buyer or the importer sends the payment to the exporter or the seller or the factory. So this is broadly what is the structure of export and import. Now if you see the next slide, there is an addition of, so when we have this buyer and seller, because these buyer and the seller, they are separated by a very, very long distance, it is not possible for the exporter to meet the importer or vice versa. It's not possible to do it every now and then. And while big orders are being given by the importer to the exporter has those jitters, has the concerns, the apprehensions that whether the orders are being executed properly or not. So to fulfill this gap between the exporter and importer, there is a third entity which is called a buying agent or a buying house or a buying office or a liaison office. So we're going to talk about buying office or a buying agent or a liaison office in detail. Now, for now, what I need you to understand is that a buying agent is a mediator, is a company or a person in between the exporter and the importer, and this person acts as a mediator in the sense that the buying agent coordinates with both the exporter and importer. The buying agent secures the order from the importer, gives the order to the exporter, and gets the order executed by the exporter. The buying agent does the monitoring, from time to time would visit the factory and see whether things are being done properly or not, and will pass on the daily status to the importer or the buyer. So that's primarily the job of a buying agent. And the buying agent undertakes this coordination activity and other activities, which we'll talk about in the subsequent slides. So for all the efforts put in by the buying agent charges a commission. And this commission is anywhere to the tune of 2 to 5% if we are talking about textile and clothing. There are some other industries in which the commission goes as high as about 15%, 15%. But in case of textiles, it's somewhere around 3%, and in case of clothing or apparel, the commission is about 5%. About 2 decades back, the buying agents were known to charge 5% from the exporter and charge 5% from the importer. So in total, the agents would make somewhere around 10%. But that was possible during the good times. That was between 1990s to 2010. But post 2004, 2005, things have stiffened up a little. The markets have become very, very hard. The margins have gone down, and therefore the commissions also have gone down. So essentially, when we have this export and import happening, we have this buying agent working in between exporter and importer. So now we're going to talk about two entities. One is a manufacturer exporter and one is a merchant exporter. Now, manufacturer exporter is an exporter, merchant exporter is also an exporter, but there's a difference between the two. The manufacturer exporter is a person or a company who manufactures the goods and also exports or intends to export such goods. And normally it has been seen that manufacturer exporter owns the manufacturing facility or the manufacturing factory. The manufacturer exporter sources or procures the raw materials, processes the raw material, converts it in her factory, converts the raw material into finished goods, in this case finished garments, and then exports it to the importer's country. And the manufacturer exporter sources or gets the export order and exports in their own name. Now, the last line that you see, what we are saying here is that if you are a manufacturer exporter, you may or may not manufacture, but in formal terms, in case of when we talk about what you are putting up in the papers, the legal papers, you are showing that you are the one who is manufacturing and you are the one who is exporting in your own name, and that's why you are called a manufacturer exporter. But if you talk about a merchant exporter is a person who is engaged in trading activity. Trading activity means trading is related to buying or selling, not manufacturing. So merchant exporter means a person engaged in trading activity and exporting or intending to export goods. So if you are a merchant exporter, you hunt for orders, you take the orders, you get the orders made from any of the manufacturers, and you get it manufactured and you export it in your name. So you take the order, then you do the sourcing, you procure the raw material, and then you give that raw material to the manufacturer, get the manufacturer to convert the raw material to finished goods, and then this manufacturer delivers the finished goods to you. Now you export it in your name. That is what makes you a merchant exporter. And as a merchant exporter, since you are not into manufacturing, your prime job is to hunt for orders in the international markets. So you will be visiting a lot of buyers, making the foreign visits, telling them about your capability, or telling them about what kind of orders can you execute, and what kind of prices can you give, and what kind of delivery dates can you give. And once you get the order, you come back to your country, give the orders to the manufacturing units, and get it made. As a merchant exporter, you do not have your own manufacturing unit or processing factory, and you can export the excisable goods either directly from the premises of the manufacturer with or without sealing of the export consignments, or through her premises under claim for rebate or under bond. So the last line, you can export the goods. So you have an option. You can export the goods straight from the manufacturer's facility, from the manufacturer's factory, or you can bring the goods to your factory, to your warehouse, or to your office, and from there you can export it. Either ways, you can do that. And you can export the goods with the sealing or without sealing. Now, when we say sealing means the shipment is sealed. Now, this sealing is done with the permission of the excise department. Earlier, before GST, whenever you produce something, there was an excise duty. If you sold something, there was a sale tax. If you were giving any service to any other firm, there was service tax. Now, so whenever you manufacture, there was an excise duty. Now, since all of that has been subsumed in the GST, now what we are saying is that as an exporter, earlier, when you were exporting, you had to tell the excise department that I am ABC Export House and I am going to export a shipment. And you had to give the details of all the shipment. You are exporting, let's say, ladies' blouses made of cotton, 2,000 pieces. You are ABC exporter, and who's your buyer? Let's say XYZ importer. So you gave all the details to the excise office, and after taking the approval from them, you could seal your shipment and then send it across to the customs. So if you seal it and then send it to the customs is not going to break the seal. It's going to simply clear the goods for exporting. If it is not being sealed, it means that the excise office has not checked the shipment, and therefore without the seal you are sending the export consignment to the customs, and there the customs is going to check it, and then it will be cleared for exports. So that's the option that you have as a merchant exporter. You send it from your office or you send it from your vendor's office. You send a sealed shipment or you can send a shipment without the seal. So you had both the option as a merchant exporter. So a manufacturer exporter is an exporter who manufactures also in her own name. A merchant exporter does not have a factory, and a merchant exporter exports the goods in their own name. That is the difference between the two of them. And suppose you want to become an exporter, then it is advisable that first you take the license as a merchant exporter, and later on when you have good volumes coming in and you have taken a factory, then you apply for the manufacturer exporter. If you apply for the license of manufacturer exporter, then the government is going to ask that where is your factory. And if you don't have a factory, then you cannot get a manufacturer exporter's license. So we had talked about exporter, importer, and then we talked about a middleman who's called a buying house or a buying office or a buying agency. Now this middleman, the buying office or a buying house or a buying agency, all of these three are pretty much the same. They are used interchangeably. All of them act as mediator between the buyer and manufacturer. Buyer is the customer or the importer and manufacturer is the exporter. Now liaison office is an independent buyer's regional office from where all kinds of necessary approval is given. Buying office, buying house, or a buying agency, it is more like an agent. Now, any agency at any given point of time may work with different buyers and different brands. And in this case, all the required approvals come from the buyer. I'll explain the two. Now, let's say, have you heard of a Gap or a Zara or H&M or a Tesco? Zara, when started giving orders in India, they did not know many people, but they came across some buying agents. These agents said to Zara that, you can buy from India, and we can get products manufactured for you. So these agents, they convinced Zara to come to India and make visits to various factories, the exporters' factories, and convince themselves whether they had confidence in these factories or not. And once Zara came to India, saw a lot of factories, and they found that the systems are good and neat and clean, and the method of working is good, world class technology is there, they started giving orders. Now Zara gave orders to the exporters through this buying agent. That's the job of the agent, right? Just like a ticket agent. So a ticket agent is, let's say you are buying a railway ticket through a ticket agent, then the ticket agent is acting between you and the Indian Railways. So similarly, a buying agent, they would take the orders from Zara and give it to the relevant factories, meaning to say that if the agent is taking a denim order from Zara, then the agent will give the denim order only to those factories, those exporters who are good in denim manufacturing. So as an agent, the responsibility is to give the orders to the correct exporters, not in a haphazard manner. So Zara working with Indian factories through a buying agent. Now after 15 years, Zara realized that in due course of time, Zara started giving a lot of orders to the Indian factories, and for all the orders, whatever was the value, let's say $100, Zara was giving 5% to the buying agent. Now after 15 years, Zara did a quick calculation, and they saw that they were doing, let's say, 10 million pieces worth $50 million, and out of that $50 million, they were paying 5% as commission. Now 5% of $50 million is $2.5 million. Now $2.5 million is roughly, in today's currency, let's say 75. What is the value of $2.5 million? So which is like roughly 19 crores. So when Zara calculated this, they also tried and find out that what will be the cost of running their own office in India. And they saw that the cost of running their own office in India is somewhere around, let's say, 10 crores. So then they felt that why give 19 crores if we can have our own office in India. So they opened their own office in India, and they hired people from India only for their office. Now this office belonged to Zara, and the people working in this office were employees of Zara. And these people were working only for Zara. They were only monitoring the orders given by Zara to the Indian export houses. So in this case, the Zara office is not going to charge any commission because it is Zara's own office. So when Zara opens its own office in a country, it is called a liaison office. Okay? And buying office, buying house, or buying agency, these are all agents. They are not a part of Zara. They are agents, commission agents. They are taking orders from Zara, giving it to exporters, and against all of this, the agents are going to charge a commission to Zara. So buying office Buying house, buying agency is something which is independent of the buyer. They are working for different buyers and brands, and they will charge a commission. Now, when we're talking about a liaison office, let's say Zara's liaison office, this liaison office is representing Zara. It is Zara's own office. So all the necessary approval are being given by this office, liaison office. But if you are talking about a buying agent, then the buying agent does not have the authority to give any kind of approval. So what happens is, let's say the exporter is making a shipment of red blouses. So before starting production, the exporter has to send the red color fabric to the buyer for approval. So when they send the red color fabric to get the color approved and get the fabric approved, in case of a liaison office, the exporter sends the sample to the liaison office, and the liaison office may give the approval then and there. If not, then they will send it to Zara, Spain, and there the designer may give the approval. But in case of a buying agency, if the exporter submits anything, fabric or a red fabric or a zipper or anything, the buying agency cannot give any approval. They simply are going to take those samples, courier it to Zara, Spain, and all the approvals are going to come from Zara, Spain. So as an agent, you can only do coordination activities. You cannot give any approval. Whatever approval has to come, it will come from Zara, Spain. But if Zara has its own office in India, then a lot of approvals will be given by the Zara office India only, which saves a lot of time. So that is why buyers like Gap or Target or Walmart, they have their own offices in India, because it saves a lot of time. A lot of approvals can be given by their own office in India, and they don't have to give that much of commission, because at 5% commission, the costs are much higher. Cost of running an office in India is much lesser than working with a buying agent. So as long as a buyer is having less amount of business in India, they will work through an agent. If you are doing a lot of business would mean lot of commission. And when the commission is very high, the total amount that comes for that commission, if that is very high, instead the brand decides to open its office in India only, and that office is called liaison office. Normally, someone like a Zara, it is going to work in India either through a buying agent or its own office, not both. But I mean, the situations are not so clear and they are not so as easy as black and white. So if you take the classic example of a Walmart, Walmart has its own small office in India. Then there are half a dozen buying agents who also work for Walmart. And then there are many factories with which Walmart works directly. Now, what does it mean is that, let's say Walmart USA. One situation is where Walmart USA is working with Shahi or a Orient Craft or a Gokuldas Exports directly. There is a buyer sitting in US, talks directly with the factory in India. That is one channel. Then there is another channel where Walmart USA talks to its office in India, and through them they give orders to exporters in India. This is happening simultaneously. Some orders are being given to the factories directly. Some orders are being routed through the agents. And some orders are being routed through their own liaison office. So Walmart is a classic example, and that's a real example in case of India, that they are working directly through exporters. There is no one in between. They are working through their own office also. They are also working through the buying agents. At the end of the day, people sitting in Walmart, let's say children division, the guy who's handling children division has the liberty, the freedom. They can place the orders whichever way they want. At the end of the day, They should be getting the best of prices, and they should be getting the best of delivery dates as soon as possible. So this guy who's handling children's division in Walmart sitting in USA, they will send the inquiry to their own office in India. They will send inquiries directly to those exporters with whom they've been working for a long time. And they will also send the inquiries to half a dozen agents, commission agents. Whoever gives the best price and the best delivery dates will get the order. Now, this particular situation is there because Walmart has huge orders. Other than that, and there are few other cases also, like we have Next United Kingdom. Next, because it started with some of these buying agents in Gurgaon, and they had worked with them for about 20 years. So about 10 years back, Next said that they will open their own office. So this buying agent said that no, you will not open this office in Gurgaon or NCR or in North India. You may open your office in Bangalore or in South India. After a lot of negotiations, the buying agent in India, they said that you may open your office in South India, and all the sourcing that you will do from exporters in South India, you can do it through your own office. But if you want to buy anything from North India, you'll have to work through me only. So initially this is what happened, and then later on, after 5 more years, the Next said that no, we will not be placing any orders through you. We will place all the orders through our own office, and they opened their second office in Gurgaon. So now Next is working through its office in Gurgaon, and it's working with its second office in Bangalore. There is another peculiar case of Nike. Nike international sourcing. See, there is Nike which is selling in India. So that is domestic operations. Now there is Nike international sourcing. Now Nike Philadelphia, US. They have their buying their liaison office in India, and they source they get their orders made from Southeast Asia through their office in India. But none of the products, garments are being made in India, because India cannot make products for Nike. All of them are made either in Sri Lanka or in Bangladesh or China. Of course, China business does not happen through the India office. So imagine that the office is in India, but no orders are being made in India. The orders are being made in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. This is a case where your liaison office is in third country. Products are being made in some other countries. And you are in, of course, you are in US or your own home country. So this is also one such situation where the agent or the liaison office is in some other country, and the business is being controlled from there, and the actual production is happening in some other countries.
Sir, do buying agents that much, they have authority to negotiate with the brand, as you told about the Next, that they ask them to open their liaison office in South India only, not in North. So they do how and why company allow them to negotiate? Because it's totally dependent. I think brands should take the decision. So do they have authority to negotiate with them?
Now what happens is that, like I said, that Next was working with this buying agent for 20 years. All the factories where the products, the orders of Next was being made for the last 20 years. Those factories, who did they know? Impulse was the buying house in India, and all those factories, 20 factories, making orders of Next, they were working through Impulse. So for 20 years, they have been knowing Impulse. And Impulse is a buying agency. So Impulse as a buying agency was giving orders to those factories of other brands also. So if a buying agent tells these factories that no, you will not make any order of Next directly. You will only do orders which come through us. Then what will the factory say?
Right. So, matlab, it means we can say it totally depends on the personal relations and all, and they have their
Personal relation and your power in the market.
right, sir.
See, Impulse tells Next that I will not let you give orders in northern India. Right? Legally, it cannot say anything. Next says, fine, I'll give the orders. But then Next is not able to find any exporter because all those exporters who know the style of working of Next, they will say, no, we cannot work with you directly because we are also getting a lot of orders of other buyers from Impulse. And we've been working with Impulse. How can we, we cannot renege on Impulse. We cannot leave their side now. So Next also says that fine, we'll let us start from Bengaluru, and gradually, you know how these Britishers are. So gradually they, pick up their stones, pick up the, start, tightening the nuts and bolts at various places. And gradually when they come to a position where now they can get, they have convinced a sizable number of exporters to make products for them in north of India. Then they don't even ask Impulse. They simply open their office. So that's why. Otherwise, any of these British or any of these foreign brands, do you think they are going to negotiate with you? No. They'll say, who the hell are you to tell me not to open an office? I'll open an office. But it's not as simple as that. Similarly, we have these factories like Shahi, Orient Craft, Gokuldas Exports. These are so huge factories. Now, they are so huge that none of the buyers have the authority or the audacity to say anything to these export houses because they're so big. And if they say that from now onwards we will not make anything for you, then where will the brand go? Because if a brand is, and because these are such big factories, there aren't so many in India, such big factories. Abhi you are working with, let's say there are 10 big factories, you're working with 4 of them. If one of them leaves you, it's going to take a hell of a lot of time to get another factory to make it for you. Because big factories, they're not sitting idle. And they have huge authority. And they're working with practically all the buyers of the world. तो उसको आप बोलो कि भाई नहीं मेरे हिसाब से चलो तो बोला भाई ऐसा रहने दो तुम अपना बिजनेस अपने पास रखो विल नॉट मेक इट फॉर यू देन व्हाट डू यू डू अभी दूसरे को ढूंढने जाओगे या देयर आर लॉट ऑफ पीपल हु से हाँ सर हमको ऑर्डर दे दो बट दे आर वेरी स्मॉल वंस and you don't even know whether they'll be able to handle your order, they'll be able to, give you that quality or not. So getting manufacturers, great manufacturers is not easy. Good buyers are very less, but at the same time, good exporters are also very less. Big exporters are all the more less. So you can't treat them like your servants. So again, किसका पलड़ा भारी है उस पर डिपेंड करेगा कि किसकी अथॉरिटी चलेगी. And can you imagine how does the buying agent behave with the exporters? कि भाई आप भगवान हैं क्योंकि ऑर्डर तो आप ही दोगे. So the buying agent they behave like gods. क्योंकि there are 40-50 exporters lined up कि सर ऑर्डर दिला. Buying agent is on 9th cloud. But when you talk about big exporters, if a buying agent behaves in an unruly manner with a big export house, you know what this big export house will do? They'll simply make a phone call directly to the buyer, and that to the buyer's boss, the head, and tell them that this buying agent is behaving like this. And then what happens? There's going to be a stinker mail from the buyer to the buying agent in India that please behave yourself. And then the buying agent would understand his true position. So again, this is an example of who has how much of authority. Yeah? Accordingly, people behave. So we'll talk about the role of the buying house or buying office or a buying agent. They undertake all marketing activities because they are the ones who have to search for new buyers and push the buyers to give more orders. So they search for new foreign buyers and importers. They also search for new sellers or exporters, because if you are taking up a lot of orders, you will also have to get it manufactured, and you don't want to give a lot of orders to few exporters, because then you will be restricting yourself to less number of exporters, and therefore you will be exposed to higher risk. So it's always better to spread your put your eggs in different baskets rather than keeping all of them in one basket. So they keep looking for new buyers. They keep talking to new exporters also. At the start of the season, they are going to collect the samples for the new season from all the exporters. They will make a visit to the buyer's country. They will show those samples to those buyers, do the negotiations, take the orders, come back, and then place the orders with the exporters. And once they place the orders with the exporters and the process of execution of the order starts, then the buying house or the buying agent, they will be monitoring what is happening in the factory on a daily basis. They will ask for all the things that have to be done, all the approvals that have to be taken by the exporter. So the buying agent is going to push the exporter, please send these things for approval, because the rule in exports is that, you take one step, take the approval. You got the approval, then you take step 2, take the approval likewise. So if you got the color approval, first is you send the fabric for approval. Once the fabric is approved for the quality, then you get it dyed. Once you dye it, send it for the color approval. Once that comes in, then you send it for bulk dyeing. When the bulk dye comes in, send it for approval. Once it is approved, then you can go for bulk cutting. While all of this is happening, if you are using stitching thread, send the stitching thread for approval, quality. Send the stitching thread in red color for the color approval. So likewise for zipper, for label, for everything, for packing material, everything has to be sent for approval. Once it is approved, then you can use it, or get the bulk made and then use it. So all of this is happening. So the buying agent will be pushing the exporter continuously day and night that, ye bheja ki nahi, send us, these samples for approval. Because unless you get all the approvals, you cannot go ahead with the bulk production. And after you do the bulk production, again the final inspection will have to be done. And only then, if it is approved in the final inspection, only then the exporter is allowed to export the goods. So a lot of coordination, and then the technical support has to be given by the buying agent to the exporter. And in case there are any problems arising in between, any business, if you do any kind of business, every day some or the other problem will arise. Chota, bada, small, big, it keeps on happening on a daily basis. So the one of the prime job of the buying agent is to provide technical support or solutions to the buyers and to the exporter also. So buyers, they depend on buying agent to get their orders executed, and the exporters, they depend on the buying agent to secure orders. So therefore the buying agent is important for both exporter as well as the importer. And the role of the buying agent is, take the samples before the start of the season from all the exporters, make a visit to the buyer's country, show the samples, or whatever samples they like, whatever styles they like, then you negotiate on that. Once the negotiation is done, then you collect the orders from the buyer, and then you come back, give the order, then order processing from local factories, making product development samples for buyers. Now this fourth step that you see, making product development samples for buyers, this is actually the first step. You make the new samples for the buyers for the new season, and you show it to the buyer, and then negotiation and other things, and then you get the order. Fifth one, contacting buyers for necessary approvals. Like I said, buying agents are not authorized to give any approval. So all the things which have to be sent for approval, the exporter has to submit those samples in the buying agent's office. The buying agent is going to send all the couriers to the buyer for approval. Never ever will the exporter send anything directly to the buyer. It is a rule. Unless the buying agent says that please send it directly to the buyer. And forwarding the comments approvals to the factories, anything which is sent by the buying agent to the buyer is going to place their comments or give their approvals. So they will send the approval by mail to the buying agent, and then the buying agent will send that mail to the factory that these things have been approved, these things have been rejected, these are the comments received, please make certain changes and things like that, all of that. So a lot of communication happens between buyer and exporter, and the mediator is the buying agent. And follow-up order processing as per buyer's demand. Once the order has been given to the exporter, then the buyer says that make certain changes, or we want more quantities, or we want some changes in the price, which rarely happens, or we need it a little earlier, or whatever. So all these buyer's demand will be coming through the agent to the exporter, and whatever buyer is asking for, the buying agent will see whether it can be done or not, and if it can be done, then it will be following up with the exporter that whether it has been done or not. And eighth one, maintain desired product quality from sample to production. Buying agent, time and again, the buyer will tell the buying agent, what the hell are you there in India to do? Please monitor, please ensure that the product quality is maintained right from the sampling stage till the production stage. That is your job. So one of the main job of the agent is to ensure that the product quality is maintained. And the buyer cannot be flying from US to India every day and see things. But the agent is here only in India. So the agent can make a flying visit, surprise visit to the production floor and see whether things are being done or not, and whether the factory has been giving correct details or not. Sometimes when a factory says, "Haan ji, maal lag gaya," the production is started, the agent would send one of its representatives, please go to the factory and see whether production is started or not. So it's their job. And of course, the buying agent, they should follow inspection terms and conditions as per the buyer's demand. So whatever terms and conditions have been mentioned, according to that, the inspection will be done by the buying agent's quality department. So quality checking is done by the buying agent itself, the buying agent's office. If the buyer says no, I will appoint a third party for doing the inspection, then it is their desire. It is up to them altogether. And of course, shipping the goods. Now, shipping the goods is the prime responsibility of the exporter. The exporter is supposed to ship the goods, not the buying agent. But the buying agent has to follow up, has to coordinate, and has to ensure that the goods have been shipped. It cannot happen that the buying agent is not aware whether the goods have been shipped or not. That cannot happen. So the buying agent has to take the information from the exporter, whether the goods have been shipped or not, whether it has been cleared or not, whether it has been custom cleared or not, whether it is on board or not, whether it has been stuffed on the ship or not, has to know on an hourly basis whether the goods have been put on the ship or not. And once it has been done, then the buying agent passes on the information to the buyer, and that is where the responsibility of the buying agent is completed. If you have any questions, please, anything that comes to your mind. Do you have anything else, Priyanka?
Sir, one more question I would like to ask. That as you said, if we talk about the quality perspective, or buyers or agents have to do that quality, or फिर उसके बाद भी if brand has some problem, so that the risk has to be bear by the agent only.
नहीं, risk agent never bears any risk. At the end of the day,
on quality parameters when they check the quality.
See, what happens is, in fact, it is partially correct. What happens is that, let's say the buying agent has done the checking. And see, you can't check 100%, you can't do 100% inspection. It does not make sense. So there is a method of doing the inspection, random inspection. So roughly 2 to 3% of the garments are checked and randomly checked. And with that, we ascertain whether the shipment can be sent or not. Now, after checking 2 to 3% of the shipment, if the shipment has gone to the buyer's country, and there the customers, they start complaining, what is this, and there is problem with this, it is bleeding, or the fit is not good, or there's some problem with the stitching. So in that case, the buyer is going to slap a huge penalty on the exporter. So ultimate liability, it's a rule, it's an international rule that the ultimate liability of the product lies with the manufacturer. So even if it is the fault of the buying agent, still the liability is going to be on the exporter. But what happens is that if such a thing happens, then the buyer also deducts the commission of the buying agent, does not give the commission. That's how they penalize the buying agent. And glad that you asked this question. All the shipments which were supposed to go by sea and which has now, because the shipment got delayed for whatever reasons, for all the shipments which go by air instead of sea, for all such shipments, the buying agent does not get any commission. Because the buyer says that you were there in India and you could not ensure that the goods are reaching on time, and it could not be sent by sea, and instead it had to be sent through air. Then all the margins of the exporter is lost. So if the exporter does not make money, then they would eventually in due course of time they will stop working with us. So that is why they also deduct the commission of the buying agent. So that is the penalty. So the buying agent knows that if the goods don't go on time, or if the correct goods have not been sent, I will not get my commission. And the entire buying office, the buying agent runs the buying office with the help of this commission only. If there is no commission, what will the person eat? How will you run the office? So your entire earning is on the buying, this commission only. Now if you don't get the commission, then all your effort will go waste. So that's why. See, like you rightly pointed out, that the buying agent also must have something to lose. Otherwise, they will be least bothered. ठीक है, भेजना भेजो, लेट से होता है तो होने दो, हमको तो अपना कमीशन मिल जाएगा. That approach.
Right, so that's why I asked this question. If they don't have any, liability, so
then they won't.
Doesn't make any sense for
Exactly. They would not take the pain. They wouldn't take the pain.
Right.
It's a human nature.
Also,
Yeah.
the liability of the buying agent is restricted to just the commission part.
Only.
But if there is a lack of payment from the importer side, that would be borne by the importer, right?
No. See, if the payment does not come from the buyer, then the exporter cannot withhold any payment of the buying agent. There is no law as such. And there is no such terms and condition which the buying agent will ever sign with you. That, just in case the buyer does not give you the money, then you will also not give me the commission. Yeah. If this happens and the exporter says, I will not pay you. The agent who may fight, may not fight. Because agent may lose only 5%. But the exporter has lost entire 100%.
So the assessment of the credit worthiness of the buyer would be done by the exporter itself, not by the buying house.
Assessment?
Like we know that the most of the imports sometimes don't happen on the payment basis. They are done on the basis of the nectar of there is some nectar, I do not remember its name. So there may not be. So there are chances that importer may not pay.
See, there are chances. There have been many such instances where importer has not paid. Normally what these people do is, they will find some fault or the other and then say that, because you did not fulfill the commitment, therefore we will not pay. But if they do not have any valid reason and then they do not pay, and this also happens, mostly these South American buyers and African buyers. So if a buyer does not pay even when everything has been done correctly, in that case they are blacklisted. And this Minister of Textile is immediately going to notify all the exporters that please do not work with this particular buyer. And all the banks, see, whenever you want to work with buyer, let's say you haven't heard of that buyer and you are working for the first time, you just tell your bank that please do a credit check of this buyer from, let's say, Kazakhstan or Turkey or some other country. Your bank is going to charge you about 5,000 rupees. It's going to take 48 hours and less than 48 hours and will tell you the credit worthiness of that buyer. And will also tell you whether you should work with that buyer or not. Yes?
Yes, I got it.
There's one more thing which we'll discuss. There's something called insurance. I mean, it's called ECGC, Export Credit Guarantee Council of India, ECGC of India. ECGC tells you that you can work with any buyer in the world on any conditions, provided they are not defaulters or blacklisted buyers, and you can work with them. We'll insure it. If they do not give you the money, despite fulfilling all your obligations, we will pay you. Within 1 year's time, you will have to make all the efforts. You will have to show that you have made all the efforts to get the payment, but the buyer is not paying. You have sent mails, you have made phone calls, you have actually visited their office, still they have not paid. So you have to give the proof that you have made all the efforts and still they have not given you the payment. Then ECGC will give you the payment. And then they will take it up with the government of that buyer's country that this buyer is not paying. Then it is their headache. So ECGC is one beautiful thing where whatever terms and condition, we'll talk about the terms and condition also in the subsequent sessions. Whatever be the terms and condition, the most difficult condition, the most, such conditions which are very, very unfavorable for the exporter. Under those conditions also you can take the orders and take the insurance from ECGC. ECGC is going to immediately do a credential check of that buyer. Everything okay, they'll say fine, go ahead. You take the order and execute it. And we'll ensure that you get your payment. They'll make the payment or we'll give you the payment. So, I mean, that's one thing which does not happen in the domestic market. There are no schemes or there are no incentives for any of the brands working in the domestic market. But there are dozens and dozens of schemes, incentives, subsidies and different kinds of facilities which are given by Government of India to the exporters. The day you say that I want to become an exporter, the government will simply say, come, we'll get everything done for you. You just look for buyers, take the order, execute it. Rest, leave up to us. So that is the kind of support that the government gives to the exporters in India. The huge support.
Also,
yes.
Can you give the example of a big merchant exporter in India?
In case of apparel exports, the existence of merchant exporters is very less. There are few peculiar situations where, like Impulse, I said, Impulse is a buying house. Similarly, we have this largest buying agency in the world. It's called Li & Fung. Now, this Li & Fung is a buying agency and they also have a dummy export house. In India, they have one dummy export house. As in dummy export house, as in it's a real export house, but nothing happens there. What they do is they give the orders to exporters, and there are some orders which are made through exporters, but they are exported through their export house. So in that case, this subsidiary which has been created by Li & Fung as an export house is a merchant exporter, does not manufacture anything on its own, gets things made from the vendors, from the exporters. So by virtue of that, this export house set up by Li & Fung in India is one of the largest merchant exporter in India. Same is the case with Impulse. Impulse, which was doing business for Next in India. So Impulse also has its own export house. Again, nothing happens in that export house. And what they do is that there are certain orders which they give to some exporters, and they say that you will be giving the you will be sending the shipment to this export house, and this export house is going to send the shipment to the buyer. So these are the two cases which I am aware of, and also because of the fact that the person who is giving the order has opened her own merchant export house, and because they are the ones who are giving the order, they have the authority. So someone or the other will say, fine, we'll take the order and we'll give it to whoever you want to and let them export. We don't mind. So in case of apparel, merchant exporters are very few to come by. But if you talk about heavy engineering and these agriculture exports and things like that, you will find a lot of merchant exporters, because farmers, they are not exporters. So it's going to be the merchant exporters who are going to buy from all these farmers, get it processed, and then export it. So a lot of these food processors, they are there are in fact some who don't even process. They take the processed food and they export it. So there are a lot of merchant exporters in case of agriculture and heavy industries, heavy machinery, etc. Okay, so we'll take a break, and then we will talk about others, the job workers and the suppliers and vendors, and then there are forwarding agents, clearing agents, logistic agents, the ones who give the services to the exporters.